Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this 65th webinar of the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, coming to you from Washington, D.C. The U.S.-Ukraine Business Council was formed in Washington, D.C. in 1995. There were many U.S. companies who had gotten involved in the republics of the former Soviet Union, and so they created not-for-profit, specific country-only trade associations in Washington, D.C. In that time period, there was the U.S.-Russia Business Council, U.S.-Kazakhstan Business Council, U.S.-Uzbekistan Business Council, U.S.-Russia Business Council, and others. My name is Morgan Williams. I serve as President and Chief Executive Officer of the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council. The Business Council was pretty small for a long time, but after the Orange Revolution, they saw many more opportunities, and so we grew from around 20 members to over 220 members. So we've had a growth of 200 companies. We are now the largest not-for-profit specific country trade association for Ukraine anywhere in the world, not headquartered inside Ukraine. Our main job is to promote Ukraine as a place to do business, help make it an easier place to business, and of course, since Russia has invaded Ukraine, our main function is to throw Russia out, get Ukraine back on the track of growth, and to help the reconsideration, the reconstruction of Ukraine, and move it forward as fast as possible. We're very pleased today to have a person who's been involved in Ukraine for over 30 years. I met John Shmorhun 28 years ago when he ran the DuPont office in Washington, D.C., a major U.S. agricultural company. John has been very active in agriculture. He's been very active in humanitarian causes, cultural causes, and now he and his wife have joined together and started a new private voluntary organization to work on housing needs in Ukraine. We'll let him explain to that. So we also have today Irina Polyashvili. Irina is a longtime member of our executive committee. She grew up in the country of Georgia, went to Ukraine to law school, and she's been working on Ukraine ever since, and has an office in Washington, D.C. and Kiev, Ukraine. And then also we have Chris Feltzer with us. Chris is a member of what he claims is the largest law firm in the world. That's Denton's. And he claims to be a partner there, and we haven't had a chance to check that out yet, but we will probably after this is over, make sure his claims are accurate. He has a lady sitting next to him, I can see, who has also been very active in Ukraine, and together I think they're one of Washington's power couples for Ukrainian activities. Hello there, Alexa.
Okay.
Glad to see you here. So let's get back to John. John, thank you very much for being here. You're an expert in a broad area of topics. So, and again, tell us a little about yourself and your career. And if I remember right, you said that you were vacationing in Switzerland, and you just walked into a bar and you met a lady in that bar in Switzerland and she became your wife. So maybe you could tell us that. That seems to like a coincidental meeting that turned into be a very positive venture for you. So let's everyone welcome John Shmorhun. John, you're the head of your new private voluntary organization, so it's all yours, John.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here amongst friends, and
For those of you that are listening, I know some of you are volunteers for MoveUkraine. I particularly wanted to shout out to our U.S. people, our U.S. volunteers, Kathleen Hessert, Ken Shearer, Eric Rasmussen, Gay Matthews, Dan Engel, and our Swiss volunteers, Tina Batruch, Darius Hevoren, Paul Burasa. MoveUkraine was formed in May of last year. When the war started, I was in Lviv on a business trip. My wife was in Kiev, and it took my wife about 10 days to get to Lviv. We saw a crying need to help internal refugees who were fleeing from the east and the south and from the central part of Ukraine, to help them to find a place to live. And that's how MoveUkraine was formed in May. And if you could give me the presentation, I can get started. Thank you. And we're going to go to full screen, and I'll start talking. Very happy to be here. Why MoveUkraine was established? You have been following the news, and you know of the numbers of refugees that have fled Ukraine or fled their homes. 6.3 million recorded Ukrainian refugees, of which 5 million are internally displaced people in Ukraine. Many of those refugees want to return home. And in 2022, more than almost 1 million people, migrants, were living in approximately 5,600 collective centers, which are basically municipal buildings that have been reconverted for living. And these are in about 14 regions of Ukraine. MoveUkraine has centered itself in Western Ukraine in what we consider the safe area. And this is where we started our activities. If you look at the statistics on IDPs, most of these IDPs are women. 25% are children. There are many pensioners, about 25%, and there are almost 200,000 people with disabilities that have been displaced. Now, Ukraine, unfortunately, is a very poor country today because of the war. And the type of assistance that's dispersed to these people, it's minimal, about $53 for adults, $80 for children and people with disabilities. So I tell people that we cannot wait for the war to be over to begin these activities of housing people. Many IDPs, even today, are living in school gyms and in I consider very unsatisfactory living conditions. Ukraine needs, besides these collective centers, which are really temporary shelters, needs low-income social housing to stabilize this problem. Ukraine never had enough before the war, and they certainly don't have enough today. State mortgage programs have been suspended, so there is no alternative financing options for people that want to buy an apartment, to replace the place where they were living. And I believe, and through our experience with MoveUkraine, a lot of the local construction solutions are quite low cost and are key to resolving the immediate needs. But ultimately, it's about the financial institutions engaging in Ukraine. It's about public-private partnerships. It's about investors coming and being incentivized to invest in Ukraine with de-risking strategies. It's also about legislation for IDPs, because even in the social housing area, IDPs don't really have any priority over the people that are already on the list. Rehabilitative infrastructure is needed and services critically needed. Soldiers are returning home and they need physically to be rehabilitated and mentally to be rehabilitated. PTSD is by far the biggest psychological problem for everybody that's been living in Ukraine and that's been affected by the war. And finally, last but not least, jobs, jobs, jobs. Next. Nope. Back up. Yeah. So who are we? Move Ukraine. Our motto is to build homes, jobs, and lives for Ukrainians who have lost everything. We are, and starting last September, we began repurposing and refurbishing municipal buildings for IDPs. We have also started projects for long-term social and low-rent apartments for IDPs. We are providing jobs through many mechanisms, but even on the spot, people that are living in these shelters, we are providing jobs through needed, well, for example, sewing of curtains, certainly jobs for local entrepreneurs that are in the construction business, etc. And then lives through programs like Kids Connect Ukraine. You can look it up. It's a very active enterprise between kids, mostly Gen Z kids, Ukraine, and kids in the United States. Next slide. So this is Ukraine, and this is where we are active today. You can see Western Ukraine in Stry, Drohobych, in Kalush, and in Ivano-Frankivsk, the city, in Kiev, in Irpin, in Makariv, in Kharkiv, in Valky, and in Zaporizhia, in Nikopol, Uspenivska, and Tavria. I'll talk about that in just a bit. Next slide. Right. So we are active not only in Western Ukraine, but we're active in Central and Eastern Ukraine. We collaborate with parliamentarians, heads of missions about IDP legislation and consolidation of these shelters, because a lot of the collective centers are inadequate. We have delivered bottled water and filtration systems to the southern cities that were affected by the bombing of the Kakhovska Dam by the Russians. We've started a new collective center project in Valky, in Kharkiv, which is just west of Kharkiv city, where we will be accommodating between 60 and 100 IDPs. And by the way, not everybody fled the east. There's 460,000 IDPs living in Kharkiv Oblast alone, most of whom are pensioners and people with disabilities that were not able to get out, okay? We've completed a renovation of a project, an apartment building in Irpin that was destroyed by Russian tanks. And we have recently been nominated by the International Organization for Migration as an implementation partner to help them build and maintain these collective centers. Next slide. It's a full list. We've done a lot, and I can't say enough about my Ukrainian team and my wife, Tusha. We have, starting in Kalush and Mostishe and in other cities in Western Ukraine, we have built and completed a number of collective centers housing. You can see the number of IDPs that we have housed. We've started reaching to the east. I mentioned Kharkiv, I mentioned Kiev Oblast. And we've also delivered food boxes and filtration systems But the bottom line is we could not have done this without our partners and our donors. And there are many of them that have come to help. So we're very grateful for the support, and we're grateful for our team for getting these jobs and these construction jobs done. Next slide. Here are some examples, and you'll see Law College, Telemog. These are student dormitories. We've even done a rehab center in Ivano-Frankivsk. A number of projects that we have done. We've even in Makariv, which was one of the first city that was bombed by the Russians, where we have constructed modular houses out of EPS and other building materials that are housing people today, temporarily housing people where their home has been completely destroyed, and we've been able to construct these quickly constructed houses in their yard. Okay. Next, we do have some projects that are in the pipeline, one of which is going to start in early October, and it's in Broshnyevo Sada, which is a 3-story apartment complex housing approximately 50 people, I think. That will be, we're building from scratch, which will have a bomb shelter underneath and elevator, which will be housing IDPs that will never go home, okay? And we have a kind of a system that we've developed with the municipality that determines which IDP gets their apartment. It's based on point system, where you know, families, mothers with many children, handicapped people get priority. And then there is another project in Stri that we are working on to present to possible donors, possibly even investors, which is a residential construction project, impact investment project, where a certain portion of those apartments will be given to the city for IDP housing. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about a subject that I'm very familiar with over many, many years, and that is agriculture. Ukraine is, as you know, an agricultural powerhouse, which is suffering immensely today for many reasons. The ultimate problem for Ukrainians, other than those farms that were affected by occupation, is the restriction on logistics. And that's something, you know, there are solutions for it, but the Black Sea is the ultimate, the best way to ship grain out of Ukraine. However, there are unilateral bans on grain exports in Europe, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, on certain grains, mostly the stuff that we produce the most of, sunflower, maize, wheat. There are also licensing requirements that are imposed on Ukraine. There are the usual technical barriers to trade, administrative delays. I remember that even before the war, where rapeseed, we were shipping rapeseed to the western part of Ukraine through Poland, where the Poles would impose administrative delays just to delay and force us to go through the Black Sea. Mm. But there is also 25,000 kilometers squared of agricultural fields that have been mined. And for that, the demining effort is ongoing with companies like NGOs like Tetra Tech. And but post-demine, once they're demined, what happens? The soil has to be relooked, ameliorated. And this is a fantastic opportunity to do something right. to move into what we call regenerative agriculture. Also, the IPCC has called for urgent action to reduce greenhouse gases, and agriculture is a major carbon emitter. And the destruction of forests, like in the Amazon, don't help. So there are trade barriers, and these trade barriers are only going to increase problems with the EU for Ukrainian farmers, as corporations have net zero targets that need to be met. And if you're in the supply chain, like a farmer in a supply chain for a food processing company, if that farmer is not achieving net zero, you're not going to achieve net zero. So there are major challenges. And the other challenge is, of course, major capacity issues at the ministries and at the municipalities, because men are going to war. Salaries are abysmal for government officials. People need to feed their families. They look for jobs. Next slide. I'm addressing one particular aspect. There are many different issues, but something that we need, that Ukrainian farmers need to think about, and that's on the recently implemented Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, which is now part of corporate social responsibility for European companies, where it's a framework where farmers need to comply. And so Ukraine has signed the Green Deal. Now, obviously, we're at war and there are some delays, but eventually the war is over and the Green Deal is still in place and people have to conform. So one of the big tasks are tasks of teaching farmers and officials what regenerative agriculture requires, okay? And by doing that, we attract investors and lenders, okay? We can gain access to new markets, and we can manage climate-related risks. The Green Deal is very important, both here, and of course, climate change is affecting us all. And some of the forecasts, worst-case scenarios, I was meeting with some experts a week ago, are pretty horrific, and it's in our lifetime, okay? So Ukraine will need to comply, as everyone else will need to comply, because if we don't get to net zero, we're in trouble. Next slide. I put a business proposal up because it was something that I was working on even before the war started, but I wanted to talk about it because it's an example of what can be done in Ukraine when we start anew, okay? And it's an investment into berry farming and industrial scale processing in Khmelnytska Oblast, okay? Where we're going to implement net zero technology, renewable energy, improving energy efficiency in the buildings, reducing loads of fertilizer and pesticide use, taking care of the soil with cover crops and rotating, and reducing waste by composting. All of this stuff is stuff that, you know, every farmer in Ukraine has to think about in the future, okay? And the business, the sales revenues, I mean, it's a beautiful project. I just love it. I did all the calculations for it, but I just wanted to put it out there. We have a partner called DevWorks, which is an NGO here in Bethesda that is working with us on de-risking and capacity strengthening for investors to give them, you know, give them a softer landing in Ukraine. Project period is 6 years. IRR is absolutely sufficient for investors if there's a de-risking strategy involved. I think the last slide will talk simply about our partners that we've been working with for many months. Particularly Applied Hope Foundation, which is the NGO or 501c3 here in the United States. So if you go on MoveUkraine.org, that will take you to Applied Hope Foundation, which will accept payments. But we also work with the administrations of a number of cities in Ukraine. And you can see the other NGOs that we work with. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I wanted to talk about. I hope that I didn't use up too much time. Thank you very much. Morgan, back to you.
John, thank you very much. Just amazing what all you've been involved in, and we thank Patricia and you for all the broad spectrum of support that you provided in many areas. This all sounds great, and of course, you need volunteers, and of course, you need financial support. So we hope that some people will see this presentation and will continue. We're glad to say that the MoveUkraine organization became a member this year of the US-Ukraine Business Council, and we certainly appreciate that. So now let's go on to Irina. Irina's been involved in Ukraine, it seemed like forever, and she's a promoter of high culture. She's a promoter of good energy projects, reduce corruption, and lots of things. And she's a senior member of the executive committee. So, Irina, your comments about John, anything you want to ask him about these wonderful projects that he's working on. Irina?
Thank you, Morgan, and thank you, John, very much. Incredibly impressive project. So quickly put together, great team. Everything is working. But I think this is your private sector experience also that helps a lot in this kind of projects. And I wanted to ask you a more general and more specific question. So, you know, all these discussions about rebuilding Ukraine, everybody says that we cannot wait until the war ends, until our victory. We have to do it now. There is a lot that is being done now. So moving forward with rebuilding now. Another issue on this agenda, which was highlighted last week, is reforms. We were saying for 1.5 years that, you know, right now it's not the time because we are busy with the war, we are busy with the defense sector, in the reforms, etc. But last week there was a lot of talk about the EU accession list of reforms and the US proposed list of reforms. So how do you see, for what you are doing on the ground, what kind of reforms are needed? Or are you happy with the regulatory regime? Are you satisfied with the way the government cooperates? And here, the specific question about decentralization, because decentralization was one of the most successful reforms accomplished in Ukraine. And what do you feel on the ground when you interact with the local authorities? Are they helpful? Do you see any impediments? So what kind of additional reforms are needed on decentralization front?
Very good question, Irina. Thank you. So we have been working with cities and territorial communities since we started. And what I can say is decentralization was probably the best thing that happened to Ukraine. It also flushes out who are the good people and who are the bad people. Today, governors of oblasts are wartime governors. They have a lot of power and a lot of decision-making that they can do for you. We work, if you take a city like Drohobych, which is in Lviv, Drohobych for a number of years was named #1 in Transparency International's list. By the way, the other city, post beginning of the war in 2014, was actually Mariupol. But Drohobych is one of the best examples of municipalities that not only are anxious to bring investment and people in and high qualified IDPs in, but they also manage the IDPs properly. Okay, and so when you work with cities like, and plus they co-invest in the projects. So when you work like with cities like Drohobych, it's just so much easier. I won't name the other, there are cities that are less easy to work with. There are cities are poorer. The municipalities don't have much money, okay? And they don't always cooperate and invest like we would like them to do, which means that more NGO money has to go in. So first and foremost, there needs to be legislation on IDPs, okay? It is not fair that IDPs move into cities, okay? They were bombed out of their homes. Mariupol, they're not going to go back for quite a while. But there's no legislation that gives them any type of priority, okay? And you see how much money they get. On the other hand, when I talk about social housing, even a mother with children can afford something, okay? You have to contribute, and I believe that you have to contribute to a rent, okay? Now there are people that may completely be out, and they can't. But our principle is that with social housing, people need to pay something to be, otherwise, if something is free, it's not the same. And we see that in collective centers, where everything is given to people. Not a good situation. You can create easily, you can create ghettos. So first and foremost, it's legislation on IDPs. And secondly, capacity building. People don't know. I showed a couple of projects. People don't know, municipalities don't know how to present projects. Project management. How do you pitch? I want to build, apartment complex here. How do you pitch that? They don't know, okay? They know technically how to build something, but they don't know how to pitch it. So capacity building is needed. And quite frankly, the kind of salaries these people make today, it just encourages, theft and other problems. So maybe less people, but better salaries, things like that are needed. Okay.
But isn't like what you have been saying that you are also creating jobs? So people, IDPs that you are settling, you are also creating jobs that they can probably do.
Absolutely.
So this way, it's a multiplier effect. They
Yes.
are not, moved there for free, but there are in parallel jobs.
Yes.
That those who can take those jobs can take those jobs. Yeah.
Exactly right. Building companies, they're looking for resources. They get help. Okay. And they get paid. My wife started a kind of small sewing, women that are sewing, that are entrepreneurs, that are sewing curtains. We need a lot of curtains, and of course you can go to Epicenter and buy curtains, but it's expensive. So one of our volunteers from America, Dan Engel, he started victory gardens in the backyards of these collective centers. So we're growing stuff so people don't, have to go buy, but it's work, they have to do the work. So it's all small scale, but it does give back to the community. Okay. People that are managing the collective centers, they're hired. Sometimes they need repairs, we have to bring in repairmen, so it's small scale, but it's something that we can do at our level.
My last question or
Yes.
recall, you just joined USUBC with MoveUkraine, but you have been involved with USUBC for many years. Today, it's an organization of 220 members. So I'm sure that among our membership, there will be companies, NGOs that would love to cooperate with you. So I encourage you to go through the list of members, and I also encourage all our members to look at what John is doing and find a way to cooperate with MoveUkraine.
Yeah, I just want to add, when you're small, we're small, but we move very quickly. We've had generous donations, private donations, and so I also encourage when we work with other smaller NGOs, we're very, very efficient, and I wish that the larger agencies would pay attention to the smaller Ukrainian NGOs, because we get things done.
Okay, Chris, you work with some large U.S. businesses that, of course, are involved in Ukraine. The U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, as Irina said, that we now represent over 220 companies. We want to just say for the business community, they've been one of the #1 donors to NGOs has been from the business community, and they will continue, and many of them have their own NGOs that they work with. So we want to congratulate the business community for the great support for humanitarian work. Secondly, they've stayed in Ukraine. They've protected their employees. They've created jobs. And so they're very essential to the future. And so from a business point of view, would be your response to John, and how do we all work together to get the business community and the not-for-profit community more together and continue donations to groups like John's and others who are very effective on the ground?
Thank you, Morgan, and thank you, John, and thanks to all of you who are participating in this important discussion today, both here in person and virtually. Morgan, I will take that question and slightly reframe it on a more specific basis, based on the beginning portion of your presentation today, John, which, of course, some of the data points that you shared are compelling and, of course, very saddening at the same time as well. What Ukrainians have demonstrated to the world, something that most of us, if not all of us in this room, physically and virtually knew already, but since the outset of the war, is that Ukrainians are leaders in technological innovation. And to me, technological innovation is going to be a critical component of any rebuilding and recovery effort. And to granularize that point, I have witnessed firsthand that 3D printing has increasingly been used to develop temporary shelters for IDPs and refugees, but not only temporary shelters. It is now used not just on a prototype basis, but at scale to build sustainable, cost-effective, and efficiently permanent structures, permanent homes, permanent buildings. And so I would ask whether you are aware of any Ukrainian companies that are in this space now and that believe that they are going to be a part of the broader, not just Ukrainian, but global solution to this recovery effort in deploying that critical technology, not only on a near-term basis to assist with and mitigate this IDP and refugee crisis, but on a longer-term basis. And so that would be question one. And if that capacity is still in nascent stage in Ukraine, what can we as a global community do to help bring that technology from the West to Ukraine?
Very good question. 3D printing is in Ukraine today. I've heard of at least one company, construction company, I don't recall the name, that have brought 3D printing in. I don't know exactly what they're building. It could be kind of a modular homes construct. If you bring the technology and we have the raw materials, it's going to happen. It will happen. I see demonstrations. If you saw the picture of one of the modular nests that we built in Makariv, built from scratch. It was, I mean, it wasn't out of 3D, but the fact of the matter is, it was built like in 3 weeks. Okay, turnkey, at a very, very good price. Okay, I can even tell you the price was 42 square meters. The price was $25,000. Okay, just do the arithmetic and you'll figure it out. So, yes, if that speeds up the process, and if a company comes in and starts doing it today, guess what? When the war is over and the financial institutions get serious and kick in, you know, we can encourage investors to come. It's going to happen. I promise. It's just going to happen because it just will. You know, Ukraine is a cold country in the winter time. The most important thing, and I've seen modular homes that have been brought in from Poland, where you can feel the wind whistling through between the walls. Okay, so sloppy construction, modular homes. To get the best modular home, quite frankly, it should be built in Ukraine, not have to be shipped across country, and it should be put together properly. Insulation is a big problem. And this year we expect, you know, the infrastructure will be hit. My wife and I have been in the cold last winter, in the cold and darkness for weeks at a time, climbing up 8 flights of stairs because, you know, and of course you realize what proper insulation means, you know? So, yeah.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Back to you, Morgan.
Thank you very much, Chris. John, you mentioned that while you've been doing this new work with MoveUkraine, you found some new opportunities in Ukraine, and you might want to mention some of the new opportunities you think you found in Ukraine for businesses, for other PVOs, and the need to be dealt with. What would you say about some of the other new opportunities you found in Ukraine working in this housing area?
That's to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, new opportunities. Morgan, I've mentioned. I think now and certainly after the war started, there will be, especially in Western Ukraine, major construction projects for low income and social housing for IDPs. And I don't exclude that in central part. I'm just saying that there are many IDPs in Western Ukraine that need proper housing. So I feel that that's important. The other very important field is in rehabilitative health. We are being asked by the governors of Lviv and of Ivano-Frankivsk to rebuild buildings as rehabilitative centers. Now, we've done one, a very small one, but rehabilitative centers are, you know, it's not an easy construct. I mean, it's a building, but, you know, you have to have specific types of design and equipment needed for that, okay? That's going to be a very important area. Both physical and mental health of our returning soldiers is becoming ever more important. There are 100,000 soldiers with missing limbs. 100,000. Okay. Those people, and I've seen them in Lviv. I've seen them in Lviv at a large rehabilitative hospital next to Superhumans. If you've heard about Superhumans, a boy, 18 years old, without legs, all the way up to the hip. It's just heartbreaking. What is his life? He'll get the limbs, but how is he going to recover mentally from that? These are very important issues, as we've seen in the United States with returning handicapped veterans. Very high suicide rates, expect the same in Ukraine. So that needs to be dealt with very quickly.
Well, thank you very much, John. We're all very concerned about continuing support from the U.S. government to defeat Mr. Putin over there, and we need to get to the Congress and to the administration more information about what Americans are doing over there in the humanitarian area. We hear a lot about what the U.S. government's doing to make hardware, military hardware available, but the American people and the administration of Capitol Hill need to know more about what U.S. businesses are doing to create jobs and also take care of employees and donate to humanitarian causes. So anyone on the panel, anybody ideas about how we do more to let key decision makers in the United States know that it's just not defeating Russia, it's also building Ukraine and helping Ukraine recover and helping the people of Ukraine. That's important to the United States, and another reason why the U.S. government ought to stay involved, and also our businesses should stay involved. Any comments about, we've had some meetings recently that Raina went to where there's been a lot of concern expressed about the continuing support of the American people and the U.S. government.
We have a mic that we'll be passing around, and we ask that before you ask your question, you please introduce yourself and your affiliation. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Dr. Elaine Sorreo. I'm the Associate Director of Ukrainian American Concordia University, which is a Ukrainian university based in Kiev, Ukraine, and has been operating throughout the war, moved its server to Europe, moved some of the head leaders in the rector, vice rector to Germany to work with the German government in higher education, and for people that have been students from all over that are from Ukraine to be getting aid in Europe. So to that end, the Dr. Yulia Romanowska, excuse me, is particularly interested in fostering work with U.S. government and the Ukrainian government in the areas of digitization. And the digitization covers many different areas and has sort of like a blanket overlay to the sections that you've just presented, particularly in science/agriculture. And they're working closely with the new, I lost it, here it goes. Anyway, the gentleman who is now the head of that, Mr. Fedorova, I believe. Thank you. And we're looking to see this really blossom. So I'm connecting the points you made, which is important, the decentralization, and yet the reality is there'll be a significant funding for all these sectors that will be coming from the multilaterals that Ukraine will have to administer, because that goes through the national end of the government, and then can be decentralized into working with organizations, again, public-private partnering. So how do you propose to create a smoother path for this to happen? Because right now, it's one of these sort of ping pong balls. It goes back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. And we really do need a plan. And maybe MoveUkraine, with its excellent records thus far, could present a plan to those in the CMU who are responsible for creating the processes of accessing the funding that's needed at these incredible levels. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know, we weren't able to see the speaker, but maybe they can't move the screen. Who would like to anybody make a comment about that, and then we'll go to Nadia Komazilgan. She'll watch the chat line, and please keep your questions direct and short and to the point, so we can take some more questions. Who would answer the comment or question just made?
Well, I'll take a shot. Move Ukraine does a lot of things, but we're not a panacea. We can't do everything, and we need to focus. So I don't really have a proposal for that, and I think there are other NGOs that probably could take that on. I just wanted to mention, because we do have a lot of things going on. In terms of construction, we do have the University of Notre Dame, the architectural department, that will be coming to Ukraine in the next month. They're going to a specific city in Lviv that has reached out to them for help in urban planning. And this is going to be, one of the problems of the United States is, as I've been told by them, is the problems of urban planning. Okay. And I think this will be a great opportunity to get things right. That it's not just about building apartment complexes, it's about planning around those things. And that will be a critical thing in the reconstruction of Ukraine, urban planning.
Okay, before we go to the chat line, would there be another quick question or comment from anyone there at the in-person meeting? Nadia? Anyone else there at the table?
Yes, there is a question.
Thank you very much for this, John. Wonderful to see you again after all these years.
Oh my
You
goodness.
look better with that beard.
Oh, with the beard. I thought you said the tie. I never wear a tie.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on your comment about capacity building.
Mhm.
Yeah, I happen to have been in Ukraine about 5 years ago on a urban infrastructure rebuilding project. And we traveled pretty much all over Ukraine except for the eastern part. And what we discovered was that most municipalities had a very clear idea of what they needed to have done, but had very little idea about how to approach the donor community to do it. And the impression I got is that if someone with that background knows how to put proposals together, knows how to interact with IDPs, I think that is a very fertile area.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I would say, as a great example, because Western Ukraine got a lot of the IDPs. So the institutions like UNHCR and IOM and all of these UN institutions came to Western Ukraine eventually when after the war started. But my personal experience was in Kharkiv, where my wife and I spent 3 years living, where I had farming operations in Kharkiv. And when I came there earlier this year, the municipalities didn't know anything about any of these institutions. So it wasn't even a question of capacity building. It was just familiarizing them with these NGOs like OCHA and UNHCR, and giving them contacts so that they would contact them directly. For us in Western Ukraine, it was easier because they were already in place and we could work with them, and we did. So yes, capacity building and just information, just letting people know what is available. That's also been a challenge in the kind of deoccupied areas. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move back to the picture of just the panel. And Nadia, what question have you picked from the chat line to ask John? And try to keep them very specific and short. Okay, move the photo back to the panel.
Again, it's not that easy. We need to ask Brian to come back to the room and zoom in the camera again. But anyway, thank you everybody for engaging in Q&A, and we had a very active discussion here. And I think Ken Is Ken your partner, John?
Yeah, he is.
Question from the Q&A, helping you out here. But there is a very interesting question. Have you assessed the obstacles, damage caused by corruption in your projects? And what is your strategy for overcoming these challenges?
Okay, so that question begs the question, are our projects corrupted? And they are not. So we have a very strict bidding process that we use. We're not always the favorite of the mayors that we work with because people are trying to find ways to make money, but we're very independent. We have our own standard operating procedures on corruption, which everybody in my organization is familiar with. Also documents on sexual harassment and things like that. So I brought my corporate side into this foundation to make sure that we would be as transparent as possible. And yes, there is a lot of temptation out there, and you have to, I mean, you just have to deal with it. You know, I've been in Ukraine long enough to deal with it.
Just say no, right?
Just say no.
Just say no.
Say it more than once.
Yeah. I have a quick question about renewable energy. Ukraine has capacity for everything: solar, wind, biofuels. In your construction, are you using those technologies? Because, you know, we see that the Russian attacks on the infrastructure show that the energy grid has to be decentralized as well.
Yes.
So when you are building, are you thinking about this? Are you relying on renewables?
Yes. So we have a project in Khotin in Chernivtsi Oblast with IFC, International Financial Corporation, where we are helping to fund, because it's a very large project, helping to fund solar panels and heat pump for a building which will house approximately 80 IDPs. So I'm very familiar with that. Unfortunately, solar panels are expensive still in Ukraine. There are some subsidies, but and you know the history of alternative energy going into the grid system in Ukraine. That's also fraught with problems. But yes, as grants to help the municipalities reduce their electrical and sometimes gas needs, it is a component, and we think about it and we try to participate where we can. That's one project where we will participate. Yep.
Can we take
Okay,
one?
Nadia, another question. Nadia, another question.
Sure. There is a question about running a not-for-profit. So hi, I'm Katerina. I run the not-for-profit engine. They help people learn English with one-on-one English sessions with native speakers. You mentioned that as a small NGO, you can move fast and have a powerful impact. Do you ever encounter any resistance from larger, more bureaucratic organizations because you are basically doing similar things as they are, but better? If yes, how do you navigate that and engage them to support your work?
Excellent question. So we do work with large NGOs, and we've learned, you kind of learn the hard way, but the way it's done is when you have a project and you know of this project in advance, you alert the NGOs in advance and you agree with them what each party is going to be doing. And I'll give you an example. In Stri, we built rebuilt a dormitory, a very large dormitory in Stri, the last 2 floors. And there were 3 other agencies involved with us. And we basically sorted out the work, the stuff that had to be done immediately: electricity, plumbing, water main, showers, toilets, you know, this sort of thing. And those guys were doing the actual rooms, the corridors and things like that. So if you plan the work so that the quick work, you know, if you can plan it accordingly, it can work. But there are always delays. There are delays. I would love to work on my own and do it myself, but, you know, funding is limited. So we do rely on these large NGOs, and we just, if you're working in partnership with them, you have to be real partners. You have to have a back and forth dialogue. You know, that's how it works. Yeah.
Okay,
Several people asked for your email address. That's okay to share it?
Sure.
Online,
Sure.
as well as the website, MoveUkraine.org.
Yes.
This is the website for MoveUkraine. Morgan, back to you. Okay, another question from the chat. Rural Ukraine was always depopulating before war. Now it's even worse. The smallest villages aren't sustainable. Now is the opportunity to relocate citizens into larger regions and towns and make them sustainable. Your thoughts about that?
Well, it's a question of financing, but it's also a question of jobs and schools and things like that. Yes, it's very tempting. For example, Irpin, which is being slowly rebuilt, to move more people in Irpin, but there's a capacity issue in Irpin. Okay. So yeah, I mean, moving out of, but that's the whole thing about urban planning. It's not just planning cities, it's planning around cities and building up proper suburbs, things like that. So you don't have to go into a city, but you know, if you can plan properly, you can live on the outskirts. But again, you know, to sustain, you need homes, jobs, and lives. You know, you need those three components to make things work. Yeah.
okay, one final question, Nadia.
There was a question, are you finding a price premium for regenerative agriculture in Europe?
Not sure I can answer that question. Why don't you give me another question? I'm not in the energy sector.
I'm happy to jump in with,
Go
with
ahead,
it- with
Fred.
another question. John, mindful of your longstanding work within the agricultural sector and your expertise, and we discussed this briefly earlier today as a tease to the rest of the group. I have heard on multiple occasions now in the last few weeks references to commercial demining. And to me, that can take multiple forms, and I've heard it defined in multiple ways. I heard this implicated during UNGA Week in New York during multiple conversations, and actually a leading NGO focused on demining activities in Ukraine implicated this again during a USUBC event last week. So from my standpoint, I am curious to hear, from my standpoint, I believe it's very feasible to ask that major investors from outside of Ukraine agree to build into the cost of certain agricultural investments some of the financing required to engage in and complete these demining activities. That, to me, it is a very novel approach. And if these outside investors are going to reap the ultimate benefit of these investments, then it's understandable and I think reasonable to expect that they help create the fertile grounds necessary to reap those benefits in the form of financing these demining activities. So taking it out of the exclusive purview per se of governments, multilateral institutions, and NGOs, and in essence, compelling the commercial sector to have a stake in these demining activities as well. Do you see that as a reasonable path forward? And do you believe those investments would come?
As a businessman, I would say it's a great idea. I think any commercial structure that can do that as part of an investment in agri-land will be highly efficient. It's in a highly efficient way. You have to build legislation around that, you know, because there's liabilities, there's all sorts of things connected with that. So
Yes.
I think it's a great idea, but we gotta put some teeth into it. So, but the demining effort, I was told by a demining expert, we're talking, you know, decades upon
Right.
decades of demining that's going to have to take place. Yeah.
Right.
John, review for us quickly how people can donate to Move Ukraine, how they donate in Ukraine, how they donate in the United States. Give us a quick review again of how people can donate to Move Ukraine.
Go on the site where it says donate. It'll take you to a donate page with Applied Hope Foundation. If you want to donate directly, you just send a note to Gay Matthews, who's our accountant here in the US, and she will direct you how to donate directly. For our Ukrainian citizens that want to donate, there's a PayPal, not a PayPal. There's a way of donating directly. I forgot the system that's used, but you can donate in hryvnia as well. So we appreciate whatever donations you can give. It's for a worthy cause.
John, thank you very much. And Nadia, did you want to say something, Nadia?
Irina had a question.
No, it's not a question, actually. I just wanted, on behalf of everybody who is here, to thank our wonderful host, Chris, and the Dentons for hospitality and for having us here. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, then final comments from Chris, and then final comments from Marina, and then final comments from John. And John, thank you very much for the opportunity to highlight the housing issue. We really haven't had programs on housing before. Not too many people have highlighted this issue, but it's one that goes along with 25, 30 other issues, and they're all interconnected. You know, people got to have housing, they got to have utilities, they got to medical care, they need jobs. You know, it's a massive undertaking, but housing is so critical, and it's the first time we've really focused much on housing. So, Chris, thank you again very much for hosting, and your final comments.
Thank you, Morgan. I just want to give a big thanks back to the USUBC team for organizing this discussion today, and of course to John for sparing some time to have this really important conversation and opening our eyes to some additional opportunities of essential need in Ukraine. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marina?
I also want to thank John, and because of John and his wife Tusha and people like that, you know, Ukraine is being rebuilt as we speak. This started as a volunteer NGO, but I see a much bigger future for you guys, because we were talking about since the war started, meaning the full-scale war 1.5 years ago. But the war started in 2014, and there are huge areas of Ukraine and Eastern Ukraine that have been devastated even before, but even more now. So after they're liberated, a lot of your experience will be applicable there as well, because those areas will have to be rebuilt, and people will want to come back, and the housing and everything, urban planning, everything will be needed there. So I see a much bigger scale in the future for you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, John and Patricia, for all you've done for over 30 years. It's just amazing. And you ran one of the largest agribusinesses in Ukraine, and you ran one of the largest U.S. companies, of course, that are still deeply involved in Ukraine, even though they changed their name. And so thank you very much for that. And we like to say at USUBC, full speed ahead. We also like to say that we want to have two main goals. That's to build Ukraine and throw out Mr. Putin. So That's the two main goals in 2023. And so again, John, thank you for your longtime support of the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, and full speed ahead, and let us know. We want to work together. I just told you we have a donor from the United States that wants to get some money to Ukraine. We turned in a proposal from you and I, and we got picked to send $10,000 to Ukraine. So he was very impressed with all your work. So John, your final comments.
I'm very happy to be back in the United States of America. I'm very happy that there is a continuing resolution. I'm not happy that there's no aid going to Ukraine for a while, but I trust in our institutions that there will be. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I love seeing my brothers here. I've got 3 brothers in the United States, so it's good to come back. But actually, I'm looking forward to going back to Ukraine.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, we'll be having some more webinars. The U.S.-Ukraine Business Council is, of course, deeply committed to the future of Ukraine, and we appreciate all your support. So as we say, full speed ahead, stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.